Welcome back to Against the Cage, your MMA home for all the best fight previews, recaps, and exclusive interviews. So make sure to give us a like and subscribe if you don't want to miss any of that stuff. My name is Jake Aryeh. I'm here with my co-hosts Scott Fontana and Erich Richter. And guys, we're going into a UFC pay-per-view finally once again. It's actually been 7 weeks. I don't know if you guys have known this, till UFC 319 since Khamzat Chimaev defeated Dricus du Plessis. And I'm not sure if this is a case of maybe absence makes the heart grow fonder, or if it's the opposite. Maybe some of the excitement about the product has died down. Scott, I'm going to throw this to you. What do you think about this little hiatus that we've had? How has that impacted the UFC?
I'm sure they're fine, right? They've made 1.1 billion a year on their TV deal, so they're not concerned. But I will say this. As far as scheduling and pacing and that kind of thing, obviously the reason why we're here in that situation is because Noche UFC did it kind of got, you know, de-escalated, de-emphasized, not a pay-per-view after everything fell out. They couldn't have their venue in Mexico. They redid things, right? So the whole was not really part of the plan. They didn't mean for this to happen. It would have been nice if maybe one of the four events that they held in the interim was actually like kind of like a higher end fight night in the interim, but like we had a lot of them, I think, earlier in the year. All four events they actually staged, if you just go by our event rating, they're in the bottom half of UFC's event ratings this year. So not really their best foot forward. But having said that, I do think they're probably fine. I wouldn't be worried if I was the OC.
Eric, how about you? I know your box office, so maybe how do you think fans have been reacting to that little time away from
No,
pay-per-view?
I do some research on this. I believe that the last time that the UFC only had 12 pay-per-views in a year was back in 2017. I think that that's noteworthy. I mean, obviously they've done two pay-per-views pretty much every July since 2018, and that included this year. Obviously, around International Fight Week, they did a pay-per-view, and then they'll do one at the end. That's pretty commonplace for the UFC these days. Now, I would just say. Obviously, we had the issue in September. It's been a little bit of a lull from August to September. As far as I'm concerned, there hasn't been a whole lot going on in terms of, talking pieces and stuff like that. Obviously, you had the TV deal at the beginning of August with Paramount. But for me, I have think it's a little bit of a lull, and it's not just a lull in terms of like the actual like pay-per-view level cards. If there was a bunch of really good fight nights in between, I wouldn't have had an issue with this. But there was a lot of really regional level cards, at least in my opinion, where you're kind of looking at it and there's not a lot of fighters that you know on a card, or maybe there's an Apex show thrown in here or there. So look, is the UFC in trouble? No, you know what I mean. But from a fan's perspective, the last 7 weeks I've been like, there's not a whole lot going on in this world right now. I think they had two. Not only was it 7 weeks on a pay-per-view card, I believe they also had 2 weeks off in that period of time as well,
I
where they
think that's
didn't have a card at all. So that is honestly rare. I mean, UFC has what is it, 44 cards a year or something like that? It's a lot.
yeah.
I
Well,
don't.
listen.
I think they're still going to end up with 13 pay-per-views this year. That's not like
Is
the
it?
issue. They didn't get. Yeah. Oh yeah. No. They're still at 13 because 311 was to start the year, and we're going to finish at 23. So they're simple math. That's 13.
Yeah.
But
Math.
also I would say that I'm going to push back on you on the regional definition there, sir. I don't think that they ever hit regional level MMA. Regional MMA is distinctly lower than what they are. Can they put better feet forward? Absolutely. But yeah, that's harsh, dude. I'm going to push back on that.
I
Alrighty.
guess that's
Well,
fair.
guys, we
Fair.
are finally at the pay-per-view, so let's go ahead and talk about it. The main event being a rematch between Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. And whenever we're talking a rematch, I feel like we kind of have to go into the first fight, where, of course, Magomed Ankalaev got the better of Alex Pereira over the course of 5 rounds. Close fight, but, it kind of seemed like Pereira was a little bit of a step behind him. And, this is something that he's talked about, Pereira, saying that he wasn't really there on that night. And there's been some maybe fan sentiment as well. There's been some speculation from fans, sort of saying the same thing. But Eric, you interviewed Magomed Ankalaev last night, and he spoke about the striking exchange. Let's take a little listen to that.
as fighters, we know when is it safe, so to speak, to go forward to pressure, when you have to be more cautious. This is like the information that you read when you inside the fight. I can't explain it with my words, and it just worked out that the information that I received from him in that cage told me that it's my fight. I can move forward. I can pressure.
Alrighty, so there you have it. And listen, I think that when we're talking about this, an interesting point would be like, was this just the night, sort of like Pereira has been saying, or is this just the matchup? Maybe what Ankalaev is alluding to in that clip there. Eric, what do you think after talking with Magomed?
Yeah, so not even just having talked to him, I think that a big piece of Magomed Ankalaev is he's been expected to take over this division for a long time. Magomed Ankalaev, obviously, he had like the submission loss to Paul Craig at the very beginning of his career, but including that, even Paul Magomed Ankalaev was, if you look at like the betting markets of to be champion by the end of the year, Magomed Ankalaev has been the favorite to be the light heavyweight champion by the end of whatever year you want to choose for probably like 4 years. So Magomed Ankalaev very highly thought of. The grappling skills are a big piece of it as well. Pereira, I think that. I believe that there was like a rumor flying around that he had some sort of like I believe it was norovirus or something of the sort. I don't obviously unverified. I have no idea if he was actually sick or not. But for me, I thought that stylistically, I think it played out kind of interestingly. I don't look at it as like maybe an energy thing. I think Ankalaev has better forward pressure with the grappling, and I think that is always going to be a problem for Alex Pereira, even though he is the better striker. I think that Ankalaev pushing forward is it's going to be something that he does again on Saturday, and I don't know what the exact answer to that is. I talked about leg kicks with him, and he said that he pretty much was able to the forward pressure was able to keep him off of it. So yeah, it was an interesting result. Do I think that we're looking at a whole lot different? I'm not so sure. Scott, what do you think?
Um, So as far as whether it was like that night or whether it was the matchup in particular, I do think there's a little bit of both here at play. I think Pereira maybe didn't fight the way that we're used to seeing him in the UFC, and it really did start. There's kind of that point in the middle, maybe early middle of the second round where he starts to he gets stung by Ankalaev, and like the whole fight like turned there. There really was, because I rewatched the fight today, having not been on medications from a jaw surgery when I watched this live 6 months ago. I had a little bit of more of a fresh 7 months at this point. It's been a while. I had a little bit of a fresher and more lucid perspective on this fight. And I do think that there was like the key demarcation point where Pereira was doing pretty well, and all of a sudden he got stung and he was not the same. I do think Ankalaev absolutely can replicate that. I don't know if Pereira will allow that to happen as much this time. Maybe he'll be much more prepared and condition himself into being able to fight the way he does and hold his ground a little bit more, which is kind of a critical thing here. He did at least fight off all those takedowns. He didn't get taken down.
Yep.
And he is going to have to be aware of that if he's holding his ground, right? If he's holding his ground, it might be a little bit harder to get those takedowns rather than when he was backing up. I'm not sure, but we'll see. There's elements of both. The other thing I do want to ask you about, Eric, because there was obviously a scoring element to this fight. It was a close fight, right? If you look at MMA decisions, split down the middle, 48-47s either way. We're kind of look at this fight as like, oh, Ankalaev won and Pereira didn't look so good. But it's like we live in a world where it could have gone either way. I know you had your 40-40 or 47-47, Eric, and that was nonsense. I love you, but that was nonsense. But as far as the fact that this fight is close, do you think that there's any element to the fact that, hey, we had a close fight the last time? Could a Pereira who fights a little bit better swing it the other way, or is there more at play?
Yeah, so for me, and like I'll go back to the old boxing saying is like when you become the champion, you get better, by like 30%. For me, I look at it like Ankalaev should be riding tall in here, even more confident than he was in the past. Alex Pereira not getting any younger, as we know, and nobody is obviously, but Alex Pereira's taken a lot of fights, kickboxing, UFC. He is a veteran of the combat sports game. So for me, he's going to get even better. Magomed Ankalaev will, and this is a guy who he didn't land a takedown and he won. That was kind of shocking. Like, and I even asked him. I was like, it was kind of surprising to see you maybe not solve his striking, but was able to put it forward in a way where Pereira looked kind of off balance. He looked confused. He didn't look like he knew what to do. So from my perspective, I look at it like Ankalaev should come in here riding tall, thinking that he's the guy because he won the fight without even landing a takedown.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Magomed Ankalaev, I mean, it's not really much of a secret that he's not, let's say, as big of a fan favorite as Alex Pereira was. And I just want to ask you guys, let's start with Scott.
Still is, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that there is anything that Ankalaev can do to change that with fans from this fight?
Yeah, honestly, look, the easiest answer is finish Poatan, right? But I'm gonna go a little bit further. I'm gonna say there's a little bit more to it. I think what he needs to do, I think he needs to let his fighting style speak to the fans. It's challenging, obviously, for a non-English speaker to break through as a U.S. star. But Pereira, I mean, he's got a great blueprint for it. Huge, perfect example of this. Part of the fact he's got that aura. Obviously, that's I think a good chunk of it is the walkout. The bow and arrow gesture, Shama, right? He's got a few things up his sleeve that even without having, he can't cut a promo in the same way, and maybe he doesn't speak the language natively of Americans, he doesn't speak English. There are things that go beyond that. I think a lot of it really is just the way he fights. It's very in your face. It's dangerous. You're hanging on kind of every strike, right? You're always waiting for him. It's kind of like it's almost like I don't want to say they're analogous, but there's similarities to the way Crow Cop was thought of, 20 years ago with the leg kicks, right? The high kicks. It's a different thing, but you kind of hang on every strike, right? So that fighting style spoke for itself. I don't know that we have that necessarily with Ankalaev, but if he can start showing that, hey, his style actually has some danger to it, you can start having him resonate. And I don't think it has yet. And that would be the thing that I think he can control a little more.
Yeah, what do you think, Eric?
It certainly hasn't resonated yet. It hasn't resonated, and the UFC obviously is kind of pushing him, at least in my head, right? And this is maybe tinfoil hat, right? But
He's
he
a
goes
champion. They got to push him.
right. They're pushing him, but I'm just saying, like when he goes into the UFC PI, he starts trash talking, even though they don't speak the same language. They're doing it through Google Translate at a UFC headquarter spot. I think that they probably, in my head at least, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would say that they were saying, maybe start trying to show maybe there's a little bit of bad blood here. It's a rematch. It's a big fight for you. It's probably the biggest fight for Ankalaev at light heavyweight. This one currently, unless there's a contender that can arise here that can really resonate with fans, Pereira is the biggest star at light heavyweight. So this is a big fight for him and an opportunity for him to grow his star. So, when he goes into the PI, he starts, talking smack with Pereira, saying that he doesn't like him and all that jazz. For me, I think that is a step in the right direction. Obviously, I'm Mr. Box Office here. I'm here for the trash talk. I love it. It was interesting seeing two people who don't speak the same language do it, but I'm here for it. Go for it. I have no beef either way. I like to see it. Now when we when we get into like the actual nitty gritty fighting style. How about like even if he doesn't understand, even if they don't understand what each other are saying, how about like a takedown where he like brings him over to the corner and starts yelling at Dana, even though Dana probably wouldn't understand him, like something like that, where it's just like a show of dominance that's a little bit more appealing, or maybe a little bit more anger filled, or something like that. Something that can just like rouse up a crowd, one way or the other, for better or worse.
You're pulling out like a trick that Khabib can do, but
That's
Khabib was a
why
very particular fighting style and a particularly dominant fighter. I don't know how many fighters are capable of doing what he could do,
Something
But,
though,
but
like
I
some
see your
sort of
point.
yeah, some sort of stick. Like Marab, I feel like he won over some fans with like the showboating in the
Yes.
octagon, like that kind of stuff. Like some
Hamzat
sort of
Chimaev
Muggin.
picks him up and starts yelling at Dana. Like, I'm not saying that he's even capable of doing something like that. I'm just saying, like, give me something interesting like that.
yeah, I get what you're saying. But listen, we have a whole other title fight to get to. So before we get to that, let's round out this by talking about the former champion, Alex Pereira. Eric, I'll throw it right back to you. Do you think that there's anything different that he can do in this fight to maybe change the result of it?
Um, my very big concern here is that he is getting older. Um, and I'm not so sure that his skills are going to translate very well against a guy like Ankalaev, who's in his athletic prime, is a grappler first, who has that in his back pocket if things go sour on the striking. So I'm not writing Pereira off by any means. I don't like I won't be betting Alex Pereira. How about that?
Scott, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I pretty much said this earlier, but he's got to stand his ground. He just does not fight as effectively off the back foot. We saw that in this last fight. Part of it was he was hurt, right? And I don't think he recovered, but also maybe there's the fact that the takedown defense held up, hopefully can embolden him a little bit to be able to stand his ground more, right? Is it going to hold up again? I don't know. But he defended 12 takedowns if you go by UFC stats. That is impressive without getting taken down. He's really got to make Ankalaev earn all those inches of canvas in the cage. If he can do that, and he probably ought to go a little lighter on the leg kicks and maybe lean into a little bit more, mid-range upstairs offense too, because as much as the leg kicks should have been a very effective weapon, and they were to some degree, Ankalaev fought very well through 48 landed leg kicks. If that's not going to slow him down, something else has to. I think I would be interested to see a different element of the strike. It's not like you abandon the leg kicks. They're a weapon, but
One of his
he
best.
he's got so many weapons in that toolbox. He can do a whole lot, and I'd like to see some more.
It's
It's
just very
possible.
surprising. It was very
It's possible
surprising.
that Ankalaev's calves got a little bit conditioned from that Jan Blachowicz fight. Who knows?
Must have.
Just in
Um,
general, I mean, he's got a lot of he's actually a much better striker than I feel like anybody gave him credit going into that one. I hope we don't understand now that Ankalaev has some hands.
Absolutely. And this is something that you alluded to, Eric, too, is like people think of him as sort of a wrestler first, but like a lot of his fights are on the feet, like as of late at least. And he's got some knockouts. So I think that that's kind of what we saw in that first fight, and very interested to see how this one
And
plays out. But
Poatan is very hittable. He is hittable. He's
Oh yeah.
always been in this UFC level. We've seen him get hit. So, there's going to be opportunities to land. And we already saw it last time. Maybe it'll happen again. I don't know. It's going to be tricky.
well, because it is a UFC pay-per-view, it is time to get into our sports entertainment rating for each title fight. So we'll have two of those for this episode of Against the Cage. If you want to know the criteria, go back a few pay-per-views to earlier this year, and we set that up for you guys. But it's out of five. So in terms of the sporting aspect, the top contender going up against the top contender, I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 5. I cannot think of any two people that would be more deserving for this slot. So pretty self-explanatory there. In terms of the entertainment value, how excited I am for this one, I'm going to give it a 3. I don't think that this one has the excitement that I would want for it's not doing it for me. I don't know. It's just an intangible for me. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, but there's not a whole lot of juice there for me. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll go there as well. I got a 5 as well for the matchup. There's no other matchup at light heavyweight that makes more sense than this one. Obviously, that also might be an indictment on the division, but regardless, go 5 there. Yeah, in terms of excitement, I'm kind of at like a 2 right now. You lost a lot of the rub on Alex Pereira when he lost that fight. Neither of these two speak English. I think that they're trying to still sell the fight, but yeah, I don't know how there's a ceiling to it. Unfortunately, it's just the reality of it. So I'm gonna go 5 plus 2, which will be 7.
How about you, Scott?
I actually went the same way you did, Jake. I've got a 5 for sport. Who can disagree? It's the champion against the recently dethroned champion who could have, in theory, won that fight. It's really hard to look at that as anything other than this is a 5 from a sporting element. This is our top two guys at 205 pounds. Entertainment wise, yeah, I kind of lean with you, Eric, but I am going to give it a little bit more of a 3. I do think there's some very interesting tactical elements to this fight that from a fight entertainment standpoint, I am still curious to see some more dimensions to the way these guys match up. I think it'll be cool. So I've got an 8. Jake's got an 8. You got a 7. That averages about to a 7.7. This is a solid title fight, guys.
It's an interesting one. It might not be the most like hyped one. I think that's kind of what we were like alluding to, but it is still an interesting one. if that makes sense. But let's get talking about this co-main event. Merab Dvalishvili taking on Corey Sandhagen for the bantamweight title. And Scott, last week you spoke to two parts of this co-main event. You spoke to Merab and to Corey, and one of the big things that was a focal point of discussion was Merab saying that he wanted to strike with Corey Sandhagen. He's looking for that knockout. Corey had some thoughts, and Merab responded to this. So let's take a look at what Merab had to say about his striking theory.
How committed are you to the idea of maybe keeping this fight standing for a while?
People keep telling me, don't do this, don't listen, I do whatever I want. I'm really motivated for this fight to, go and strike with Corey Sandhagen. That's the goal.
Alrighty, so you heard it from the horse's mouth there, and I just want to get your guys' thoughts. And Eric, I'll get your reaction because Scott, he's heard this a couple times now, I imagine. Is this a legit thing from Merab, do you think? Do you think he's going to make good on his word, or is this really just smoke and mirrors coming from the champion?
Oh, that's a fascinating little wrinkle that we have added, and Scott has added to this fight, where it becomes Merab clearly would have a grappling advantage here, but Corey Sandhagen is a very, very good athlete. His takedown defense is, I mean, we've never really seen Merab lose grappling exchanges, to be fair, but I really do like Corey's ability to threaten submissions and get, maybe use that to control and maybe carry his defense a little bit. When it comes to the striking, do I think Merab will strike with Corey throughout the fight? Probably not. Probably not. I think that it'll be a very similar Ankalaev type strategy where he's heavy on the front foot, walking forward, threatening it the whole time. And Merab. Merab's jumping in for a double leg, getting the hooks, getting the hips, throwing you down, get up, throw you down again, get up, and then by the end you can't even stand up because you're exhausted, and you've been getting up, 15 times in a big fight like that. So I'm interested. This is gonna be fun. Scott, you're the one who got these quotes. So where are you landing on that?
So, the only thing I want to speak to specifically the fact that I did speak to these guys about it. So, as far as the nature of his responses, in particular, Merab, the champion, I kind of thought he really was sincere. I really do believe he is very interested to see how his striking goes against Corey Sandhagen. I wonder if he maybe sees Corey as not this crazy knockout artist, because he's not. He is more death by a thousand cuts. He has capability to one hit KO you, but he is much more of a volume striker. And I wonder if maybe Merab just sees, hey, I think I can take some of these and I can throw something back that's a lot harder. He's got some knockouts. It's been a while since he's not really a knockout artist, but he can hit hard enough. He got into the UFC because he knocked out Raufeon Stots when they were looking for a fight from Raufeon Stots, and he didn't end up there. It ended up being Merab. The rest is history. So I do think there's just a confidence in, hey, I think I can test myself without going crazy here. I feel like it's going to be one of those things that maybe on the night of the fight, things do play out a little different. But he's got some trickery. And Sandhagen, look, for his credit, in the interview, I mean, he said, like, I don't expect I'm just going to style on him, but it would be a bad idea to keep striking with me. So we'll see. We'll see. I think there could be some interesting moments here. And we've seen spinning stuff, right? Like, Merab loves the spinning stuff. We will see if he whips some of that out. It's probably not going to be super successful. Sandhagen knows it's coming, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Corey Sandhagen. And Eric, I know you are our betting guy, but I'm not sure if you have the betting odds right in front of you. I do have them pulled up. Oh, you do? Okay. So what are the odds for Corey Sandhagen and Merab?
Very, very consistent throughout the betting market. You got Corey Sandhagen as a plus 310 underdog, Merab Dvalishvili a minus 440 favorite. Man, how's Merab? His come up has been amazing. He was an underdog for so many fights. Oh my goodness, like big underdog to Peter Yan and then 50-45s him. So really big come up and the respect that a champion deserves in the betting market.
Well, a lot of respect for Merab, but at the same time, like that's a pretty high plus number for Corey Sandhagen. So I got to ask it. I'll throw it right back to you, Eric. Do you think that the MMA public, the betting public, is sleeping on Corey Sandhagen here?
Certainly sleeping on Corey Sandhagen here. I think Sandhagen's waited his entire life for this opportunity. He's got the strength of schedule. He has fought the who's who of this division. He's finally there at the pinnacle, and has the opportunity here where, let's face it, Merab, if he the takedowns, the reason they're such a big favor is because the takedowns are so consistent. They're very, the takedowns are always going to be there for him, at least in the eyes of the gambling market. So, for my eyes, yeah, I think Sandhagen at plus 330 is value. Now, or plus 310 is value. Now, the interesting part about it is, at least from my perspective, and especially in MMA, especially a fight that you would project to go the distance, I would say that, you know, it would be tough to bet Sandhagen pre-fight when you can bet him live to see if he can stuff any of the takedowns and just to see how it goes. Like this one's projected to, I believe it's like minus 300 to go the distance. Like there's no one expecting a finish here. So yeah, obviously there's a little bit more upside on Sandhagen if you think that he's going to get a finish, maybe a submission even. Like you can kind of go that route. But or who knows, a flying knee while Marab's jumping in for a double leg, totally possible. But Scott, what do you think about this one?
I actually I have a betting question for you. I just kind of want your opinion because I believe I've seen this in the markets before that they do decision no bet,
Yeah.
right? So in theory, if you only see a Sandhagen win by finish,
Yeah.
should would that be a bet that somebody should identify that like, hey, I can just throw this out there. I think if it's gonna end early, it's gonna be Sandhagen. If it gets to the decision, I get my money back.
Yes, that is correct. Sandhagen, I don't think that that's out yet at the time of our recording, but usually those come out like by Friday. There'll be like decision no bet or finish no bet. So like if you think Sandhagen's winning by finish, you take by finish, and then if it goes to if Sandhagen wins by decision or loses by decision, if it goes to decision, you get your bet back. And obviously, if Marab were to beat Sandhagen by finish, then you would lose your bet because it ended in a finish. But yeah, great question.
Interesting,
That's
interesting.
a good market, and it's actually a newer market. Oddly enough, that only existed within the last like 2 years.
Okay, okay. Well, but at anyway, to the point here, I do think there is an element of sleeping on Corey. I do think he has a lot of confidence. He expressed so much confidence about this, the fact that his game is well-rounded. He's been preparing for years, building himself for years to be able to handle all comers in different ways. And he thinks he can counter Marab's preferred approach. He is a pretty live dog, I would think, in my opinion, but also I kind of think that the line is also fair, right? I do feel like we've seen Sandhagen before in big spots. He has not come up big in big spots, unfortunately. That's the type of thing he's going to have to start proving people wrong. He can. He absolutely can. But until that, the doubters are there and probably deservedly so.
Yeah, definitely see what both you guys are saying. It's really hard to, put anything other than what it is on someone like Marab, who's been so unbelievably dominant. But let's go ahead and get into our second sports entertainment for our co-main event. And I'll just go right into it. I am gonna give this one from a sporting aspect. I'm gonna give it a 4 just because I still feel like Umar Nurmagomedov is the second best bantamweight on the planet. I know that I wouldn't want to see that right away, the immediate rematch. I could have gone with it, but I think that would have ruined maybe the entertainment rating, because we've already seen that fight. So let's get into the entertainment rating. I'm gonna give this one. I'm gonna give it a 4. I'm pretty pumped up for this one. I think that. I'm going back to the Umar fight. I think I was a little bit more intrigued by that one too. But this is solid. Like no complaints. But I don't think I can give it a 5. What do you guys think? Scott, how about you?
I like your 4 for sports. I do think obviously Marab has beaten all the other guys in the top 5, so it's like he has to fight Corey now. Corey's done enough that you say, okay, let's see what this new guy can do. Let's not do a bunch of retools that we've already done before we inevitably start doing them potentially. So I like a 4 here, even though Corey is like I think he's the number 5 or 4 or whatever rank contender is just not quite the highest, right? 4's good. 3 is my entertainment rating here. I think that the fight itself could be solid, but possibly unspectacular. And I put that as more the high end potential. We've seen fight of the year type of stuff from a Marab fight. It's happened, but I don't know that the mix is here that I would high bet that, right? So I'm gonna give it a 3 there. My overall is a 7. What about you, Eric?
I'm on the same wavelength as you on this one, Scott, and obviously Jake as well with the four for the sporting aspect of it. Obviously, as you said, he's beaten everybody in the top five. He kind of cleaned out this division almost already. It's really unbelievable. The Peter Yan fight is interesting to me, and the Umar Nurmagomedov, another rematch there is interesting to me. So there's some other stuff out there. So I'm going to go four, and then I'm also going to go three for the entertainment rating. You know, anytime that you see a fight that's minus 300 go the distance, it's going to be really tough to get into that 4 or 5 territory. That's just how it is, especially when it's grappling heavy approaches. That's just how I am.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So what does that bring?
So I had a 7. Eric had a 7. What did you end up with, Jake?
I believe I was at an 8.
An 8. Okay, so we got what a 7.3, just a touch under the main event.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
both solid numbers. I mean, anything over a 7, we're talking about, okay, there's at least a level of excitement here, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that takes care of our main event and co-main event. And as far as the fight right below it, we've got Yuri Prochazka versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. And I feel like we can't touch on this one without, recapping sort of, or at least reacting off of what happened the previous week, last Saturday in Perth. Carlos Ulberg is really the only other guy that could have a say for a title shot. He came up with that round 1 knockout over Dominic Reyes. So it really seems like it's between these three guys. And I have to ask you because we were sort of saying that Carlos needed that first round knockout to, be in contention for a title shot. Do you think that with that, he's guaranteed himself that title shot? Or does this fight still have a say in there? Eric, I'm going to go with you. What do you think about that one?
So has Olberg guaranteed himself anything? I would say definitely not. Like he hasn't guaranteed himself anything. Now great performance against Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes got one hit and quit though. That was pretty tough. That was his chin is really in rough shape. Like he got hit with that left hook. I think once. I think one jab he looked like he was rocked against Olberg. Credit to Olberg. He's got really really powerful strikes. Now the problem is, he's the number 8 fighter in that light heavyweight division. I would like to see Olberg maybe beat, like, I would love it to see him if Pereira were to lose, fight Pereira. But I'm not saying that he's not going to get it. I'm just saying he hasn't guaranteed himself anything. We'll see how Saturday plays out. I think that if Yuri Prochazka gets a win, I think Yuri has a very, very good case to get this title shot. But Scott, I'll kick it off to you.
Yeah, I think probably Prohaska has the inside track of out of this particular fight that's to come. He's got the inside track because yes, if it is Ankalaev who leaves with the belt, that's a new matchup for Ankalaev, and it's a star. And so much as Yuri Prohaska is a star, he's probably like that second tier star, but he's got a lot of name recognition. He's got very much that aura, that personality, right? So I think he resonates in a different way than any of these other guys that we're talking about, other than Poatan. But as far as Oldberg, I mean, look, that matchup was tailor made for him, right? He took care of business. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. So he's got the inside track if it is Poatan who comes out because of that fresh matchup, right? We agree on that. I think it seems pretty clear to me how this is going to go. I would be surprised unless there's a stinker in a Yuri Prohaska fight. Uh, does that exist? Is that like a fictional thing? Yeah, if there's a stinker here, it's going to go to Olberg no matter what.
Exactly.
But realistically, I think this fight is here because they would like to produce the challenger out of it.
Yes, totally agree. And Scott, before we move on, I have to ask, you've called for this in the past. It'd be perfect. Yuri Prohaska headlines in his home country of the Czech Republic against Magomed Ankalaev. Can we do it?
That would be fun. That would be fun. It's not going to happen.
No?
It would be
Zero
fun.
I
chance.
can dream.
Zero chance.
Zero? Why zero?
Because they're not going to put a premium main event over in Czech Republic unless Prague wants to pay a lot of money in site fees.
Fair enough.
We've been hearing a lot of talk about that from Mark Shapiro, I believe.
Yes.
That is a conversation for another day.
It is, it is.
combos.
So let's wrap up this UFC 320 discussion. There's a whole host of other fights that we could look at. We're just going to take a look at one from each of you. Scott, what is your fight to watch for UFC 320?
I'm going deep into the prelims, even before like on that early prelim. I don't know what the point of an early prelim versus the regular prelims are anymore, but it's on the early prelims. Patchy Mix against Jakub Viklach. I like this fight. I wish it was a different fight for Patchy Mix. I think he still ought to have been matched up differently, but I'm still very intrigued to see what Viklach can do and how Patchy Mix bounces back. Patchy ought to be able to win this, but it's not an easy matchup. He has not been gifted anything here. And a loss is going to put him in a very deep spot. So I'm very curious how it goes.
Eric, how about you?
Feels like Patchy Mix came over to the WWE when he was with the WCW before. He's just getting tough matchup after tough matchup. But good call out. I'll go Edmund Shabazian versus Andre Muniz. I have been a fan of Edmund Shabazian for quite some time. He was actually headlining cards at one point. Derek Brunson, nicknamed the Golden Boy. He was training with Ronda Rousey for a long time. At one point, this guy was supposed to be a title contender. Still only 27 years old. He's rattled off a couple wins here. Knocked out Dylan Burtka in the first round. Defeated Andre Petrosky by decision, who was a grappler, which was something that he had a hard time with. I think he's gotten better. Andre Muniz is definitely on the downside of his career. This should be a spot for Shabazian to maybe get a big win here and maybe lift himself back into that upper echelon of the division. So yeah, that's again another prelim fight, but something super worth watching in my humble opinion.
All right, all right. Well, that nearly wraps up UFC 320. Let's get into our event rating. Scott, what do we have?
Guys, top 30 all time. We're talking about a 96. This
Whoa!
is a giant card, guys. And look, the reason is, look, it's pretty obvious, right? We have two high-level championship fights. These are good championship fights. We had 4 and a 5 on our ratings here. I think that speaks to the fact that these are great title fights. There's also, I mean, again, the Roundtree and Prohaska fight, that is extremely high level. The rest of the main card, Josh Emmett against Yusuf Zalal. We're talking about top 15ers right here. Abus Magomedov versus Joe Pyfer, another matchup of some, let's say, top 15, 20, 30 kind of range in there. That's very, very, very strong for what they tend to put out for a main card. You are getting a strong premium here. I think the prelims are solid. There's certainly much deeper prospects on here as well, deeper ranked veterans, but it's mostly guys that and women who are much more accomplished. They did a great job of building this card. The main card of the title fights carry this rating, and I think it's a very fair rating. This is wonderful.
That's probably the best card of the year.
Is that the highest one we've gotten?
Is it the highest one of the year? I'll verify for that for you. Maybe when Eric is doing his 3 bets in 3 minutes, I'll circle back.
Okay.
Alrighty, sounds good. Well, I mean, there you have it, a 96. That is absolutely insane. And Scott, you just alluded to it. Eric's 3 bets in 3 minutes. Are you ready to roll, Eric, on that?
Get your bet slips ready. We are giving out 3 bets in 3 minutes before we get there. Last week, 1 and 2. Jimmy Crute by submission plus 260 was our winner. Small profit, looking to get to 2 and 1 or 3 and 0 this week as we head to UFC 320. Big card, and we're gonna put 3 minutes on the clock. And here we go. Ju Sang Yu versus Daniel Santos. Ju Sang Yu, really big time prospect. South Korea, Korean Zombie Jr. You might know him as. Fighting over at 145 pounds. I like him to get this one done on the money line plus 130. Reason being, I watched a little bit of his regional tape. Sorry, I'm going to get his name wrong. Matsuso Kawana is who he fought. His takedown defense was solid in that fight. I thought his bases were good. I thought his grip fighting was good. And Daniel Santos is here to grapple. And that is why he's a favorite, right? So he had multiple takedowns in each of his last 2 fights. But if you watch his fight with Julio Arce, which I did, he lost those striking exchanges badly. He definitely was out, played on the feet throughout the whole fight. So I think that Ju Sang Yu gets it done here. I think he wins the fights on the feet. And I think that his takedown defense, we're actually going to find out, is better than, maybe some of the other South Korean fighters that we've seen, like a Korean Zombie. So give me Ju Sang Yu on the money line, plus 130 to get it done in the prelims. We go back up to the card. Yuri Prohaska versus Khalil Roundtree. This fight is plus 230 to go the distance, and I'm shocked by that, just to be totally transparent. Khalil Roundtree just went to a decision with Jamal Hill, 5 rounds. Yuri Prochazka has been plenty of decisions, and I know that he knocked out Alexander Rakic, but Khalil Rountree's got a crazy chin, as we've seen in the past. Obviously, with the Alex Pereira fight, right? Like I'm not breaking news here. For me, I think this one does go 15 minutes. This is not a 5-round fight, so to give me the plus 230 on the distance, I feel like that's fantastic value, and that's going to be one of my favorite plays, and that will be my second bet. Clear Roundtree versus Prochazka goes decision plus 230, and then we get to the main event. Right, this is a big time fight, and when you get into like rematches, that the fighters are going to know each other, but they already went the distance the first time. Now this one is also not expected to go the distance, but I'm not so sure if I see the value in there anymore. There was a lot higher value the first time they fought. So for me, I think, and this is going to sound crazy, but Magomed Ankalaev does not have a submission win to his name yet in his entire MMA career. Now, just because that hasn't happened yet doesn't mean that it won't. We've seen this last time that Merab Dvalishvili fought against Sean O'Malley. He had one submission in his MMA career and only one and 0 in the UFC. So and he won by submission. So I actually think that Magomed Ankalaev, remember Alex Pereira did not get taken down last time, so we have no idea if his grappling is going to hold up here. Magomed Ankalaev to win by submission is 16-1 on BetRivers. Massive long shot. I'm not telling you that this is definitely going to win. I like the value here. At 16-1, Magomed Ankalaev by submission, I think that there's totally a realm of possibility where Pereira gets taken down against the cage and Ankalaev just grabs his neck and gets an easy tap. So 16-1, we know that he has the wrestling and grappling dominance opportunities. And again, just because something hasn't happened doesn't mean that it won't. And 16-1 is a good enough flyer for somebody that has not grappled at the highest level and didn't grapple for about, he only started grappling recently when he started training MMA. So Ankalaev by submission, we're a little bit over, but appreciate you. Make some money and let's go.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Eric. And Scott, did you get a chance to check it out?
I sure did. It is by like a nose. It is the highest rated card of the year. It's just ahead of 311 with Makhachev and Moicano. And also right in that same range, UFC 316 in Newark with Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley, that second fight that they had. So basically, whatever they do a card with Merab in there, it's box office, Eric.
Yeah, box office. I'm always about it. I'm always about box office.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, guys. Well, that wraps up UFC 320, and it's a bit of a packed fight weekend. We've got UFC, we've got BKFC, and we've got PFL Champions Series, the rematch between Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes, their second fight. This is going to be on ESPN Unlimited Friday. Main card starts at 11:30 a.m. We'll talk a little bit about that in a bit on the timing and whatnot. But there's two title fights. We got Usman Nurmagomedov versus Paul Hughes, like I said before, and we've also got Corey Anderson versus Dovlet Yagshimuradov at light heavyweight. Of course, the main event being at lightweight. And guys, these are for PFL world titles. We heard a little bit about this last week from the brass, saying that they're going to have something really more akin in layman's terms to what the UFC structure is. How do you guys feel about this? Scott, I'll throw it to you first because I know you're an avid PFL watcher. What do you think?
I love how I'm always set up like that. That's fine. That's funny. It just makes me laugh. But look, PFL, I'm interested in what they put on. They have a good roster. We saw this concept actually make its debut, like almost like a soft launch when Costello Van Steenis got that incredible comeback victory over Johnny Eblin over the summer. But this is obviously, it's a grander launch. There's two title fights. It's meant to be a bigger card. But essentially, all they're doing is they're converting Bellator titles to be PFL world titles, which makes sense. I mean, Bellator's dead, let it rest. Yeah. I do wonder, though, if the casual fan is still going to get a little lost in the idea of there being a world title fight, or excuse me, a world title and a world tournament title. Right? It's old heads like me, we're used to that from Pride. Pride was still before my time, as my alarm goes off. I will ignore that. But Pride was a little before my time. But of course, I got very accustomed to the way that worked from watching old fights. I don't know if the UFC trained casuals today are going to love that there's still that PFL world title and PFL world tournament title. It's still a little strange, but ask me in December. We'll table this for now. Ask me in December how I feel about the PFL World Heavyweight title fight. I've got some strong thoughts on that, but they can wait.
Yeah, Francis Ngannou notably absent, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is like a Friday morning card. I'm always down with a Friday morning card. Like I'll watch it. I'll be there. But it's not ideal. Also, the UFC again, but we can beat a dead horse with this. The UFC had 2 off weeks in the last like 5, and the PFL kind of was just absent during that time. I would have liked to see them maybe push this card to like and strategically place it in a spot where they're not in the middle of BKFC, UFC 320, PFL all in one week. That's MMA overload. There's just too much MMA going on, in my opinion.
So we'll jump right into this discussion, I guess. The framing of this card and the timing of it. Scott, what are your thoughts on this? I'm sure you're not terribly pleased.
So look, I am able to watch this card in full at a normal time because it's the middle of a Friday afternoon, late morning, that kind of thing. I'm up and about. I get my kids up and I work in the evening. But most of you don't.
Yeah.
Most of you are getting ready for work on the West Coast, or you are
In the
in the
middle of it.
middle of your work day. Maybe you'll be able to watch the main event when you're out to lunch. I don't know what you
Yeah.
wacky 9 to 5ers do. That's not me. But it's a very strange way to do it. Like, why would you put? It's in Dubai. They're catering to a local market, and I understand that. And I have no problem with afternoon MMA in and of itself, especially when they go to the Middle East, right? That's when they want to do it. Put it on a Saturday. Put it on a Saturday. America is not going to be ready for that card. They're not watching. They're not going to care. And frankly, when you put this card on a Friday in the middle of the day before a massive UFC pay-per-view, how much coverage can you really get? We're trying. Like we're not doing anything that we don't want to do, but the UFC is the bigger fish. We're talking about the UFC on this show 40 minutes. We're not going to spend 40 minutes talking about the PFL Champions Series. It's just not going to happen. If you did this anytime over the last 6 weeks, you had the room. We would have talked about it. It could have been big. It could have been somebody. It could have been a contender, but it's not. And I think they miscalculate the way they schedule their events by putting them so close to these big UFC cards. It's not the smartest avenue to do it if you're growing your audience. I don't like it. I would like more people to watch PFL because I think there's some very interesting things to it. So stop burying it. Do better.
Yeah, and also on the timing too, like God forbid if someone misses weight, like in the main or co-main event, like that's gonna all be happening like right as the main card is happening. So that's just another scenario where it could bury it even
It
more.
it has happened with Bellator before. Bellator used to do stuff like this as well, and sometimes they would have a card going on in like Ireland on a Friday, and everyone was still talking about somebody missed weight or whatever. I want to say it happened at one point. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was did Gaethje miss weight? No. It was Holloway missed weight. Or no, excuse me, Oliveira missed weight against Gaethje. Right?
Oh, right.
Am I remembering? I want to say that happened. I want to say that's when it happened. And yes, the exact same thing played out, and I don't think it was a good thing for the Bellator product. And where's Bellator? I just said it's dead.
Yeah.
Well,
One
yeah.
thing that I would just like to add as well is like not only is this a Friday day card, but this is also, the biggest fight that the PFL has probably ever put on, right? This is a big rematch. Like this is up there with the Kayla Harrison versus Larissa Pacheco rematch. Like this is right up there in terms of, PFL's biggest events ever. And they just dropped the ball. It's a Friday day card. There's no there should have been press conferences in each country. How about an Ireland press conference, a la Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo, something like that. And the
It's
PFL
tougher
would.
to do it in Russia these days, sir. I don't know if they would have done it there, but
I,
Eric, would you certifiably say, in your opinion, can we put it on the record? Is this, in your opinion, the biggest fight in PFL history?
yeah, yeah, I'd say probably pretty easily, honestly. This is a huge fight for them, and I feel like they've kind of just missed the ball a little bit here. And I even asked that to Paul Hughes when I interviewed him yesterday. I was like, "Is this flying under the radar in a big MMA week?" And he said yes. That tells you a lot. The fighter is saying yes.
Scott, what do you think?
I don't know that I agree this is the biggest fight in PFL history. I do think when they brought Francis Ngannou over, and granted, it's not that Renan Ferreira has a giant amount of pull in and of himself, but they brought over the was reigning. They took the belt away, not because he lost it, but he was the number one heavyweight in the world, the UFC champion, and they brought him over. They had him have his next fight in the PFL Smart Cage. And I think that's going to be a really hard one for them to top unless they can get another super fight. Like this is a great homegrown fight. I think it's the best homegrown PFL fight that they've ever been able to put together. There is all and obviously some of this is the Bellator, lineage as well because that's where Usman Nurmagomedov came from. But nonetheless, we'll call it because they own the history, they own the promotion, they can do what they want with the Bellator name. It's all the same thing. I think this is the biggest in that way, but I would stop just short of saying it's the biggest PFL fight in history.
Alrighty. Well, let's wrap up this PFL card and let's get to the event rating. What do we have, Scott?
We have a 39, which obviously pales in comparison to a 96. But if we go by the non-UFC level of card, this is actually slightly better than that one from a couple months ago. The last of the PFL finals. That was a 38. This is a 39. It's slightly better in that. I mean, negligible differences I'm sure we're talking about here. Two title fights are very high level. There's also Sergio Pettis and Magomed Magomedov. That's a nice
That's a
fight.
great fight.
I think
Yeah.
the whole main card is strong, and there's decent amount of top 100, top 150 talent even throughout the prelims. They did a really nice job of building this card.
All right, all right. Yeah, very solid. Okay, so that wraps up our weekend in MMA. And you know what? I got to throw it to you sitting back home. What do you think about the PFL start time? And going back to UFC, what do you think about our judgment of the fights? What are some predictions? Let us know all that good stuff down below. If you have any haymakers, let us know. We didn't do them this week, but they'll be coming back. Don't worry. And to wrap up the other news items of the week, Scott, why don't you take it away for quick hits?
All right, guys, we have a lot of quick hits here, some interesting meaty ones. So I'm gonna dive right in here, starting with some non-MMA news, but it's too big to leave out. Zuffa Boxing, of course, the boxing arm of Dana White's promotion that he's been talking about for well over a decade. It is announced they have a broadcast deal with Paramount Plus. Very light on details with this announcement, but it was referred to as a long-term media rights agreement. I guess we'll hear more when we hear more, right? Switching gears, piggybacking off of last week's UFC 322 chat, we got our high level action fight at 155 or below that we were talking about. And it's one I'm going to take a little bit of credit for manifesting into this world. Early last month, UFC announced Beneil Dariush is fighting Benoit Saint-Denis at Madison Square Garden. That is a very cool fight to add to the card that's coming to our area. Not coming to our area, but also involving someone locally. The fight night that will take place right before 322 will be at the Apex. It now has a headliner, and that is Gabriel Bonfim against New York's own Randy Brown, moved off of the UFC Rio card that's taking place next week. It's going to anchor this one, so look for that. We've also got to go back a little bit to UFC Perth, right? There's one thing we didn't get to mention on the show already, and that is that the fact Jake Matthews is appealing after his submission loss to Magny. It was a little bit of an adventure in officiating, right? So the first round sure looked like referee Jim Perdios stopped the fight, perhaps prematurely, but then kind of just kept it going. It was like around. They were able to sort of fudge it, and maybe it was the right call, maybe it wasn't. But either way, a very strange way to go about that. Matthews is appealing. They rarely work, but hey, we'll see. Over on the PFL side, they bolstered their women's flyweight division by signing UFC veterans Ariane Da Silva, Ney Lipsky, and Viviane Araujo, per reports. And then, unfortunately, this was kind of an ugly one that made the rounds over the weekend. Bears repeating UFC Hall of Famer Vanderlei Silva, who we were just talking about last week, in his epic run to the 2003 Pride Middleweight Grand Prix Championship. That was part of last week's homework. knocked out cold during an ugly brawl at the very end of his disqualification loss in a boxing exhibition match. Awful fight for awful situation for the 49-year-old's health. Takes a brutal sucker shot like that, and already we had heard issues about his health and that kind of thing when it came to the UFC lawsuits and the settlement for that. So, not good. Unfortunately, that's what we're gonna leave on. But that was it. Busy week.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Scott. And guys, we have made it to the final round, and it was Mark Hunt versus Antonio Bigfoot Silva, their first fight that took place back in 2013. And man, this was a real interesting one. And you know what? I was actually very proud of how I scored this one. It wasn't terribly difficult to do. I feel like it wasn't terribly difficult to do, but no, wow, it was just a roller coaster of a fight back and forth, like not just like each round, but like true comeback and like going the other way. It was great. I mean, the whole thing was action packed. What did you think, Eric?
Yeah, I Mark Hunt was in great shape for this fight. And compared to later in his career when it wasn't so.
Or earlier. I mean, he used to be. It's not even that he was out of shape. I mean, the guy's Samoan, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it. I mean, he was 5'11" and fighting at heavyweight, but like the craziest power ever. It was really interesting. And as somebody that wasn't super familiar, like when they announced Mark Hunt Brock Lesnar at UFC 200, I actually didn't know who Mark Hunt was at the time, and I was like, who is Mark Hunt? Like that, I remember saying that when Dana White went on SportsCenter or whatever. So not super familiar with Mark Hunt overall in terms of his fights. But his ability to just come forward with reckless abandon, eat shots, and give you worse ones is super entertaining. I mean, really, really fun stuff.
Do I need to put together like a Mark Hunt like experience kind of
Potentially.
thing? Because he's fun. Mark Hunt has always been fun. You can go back to Pride. I mean, he used to be a K1 kickboxer. The guy hits so hard. It's
Yeah,
crazy that the fight doesn't end in this. They go 25 minutes, right? And,
crazy.
and honestly, this is one of the best heavyweight fights the UFC has ever put on. And it very well might stand the test of time in that respect because heavyweight fights just aren't very good anymore. They either end quick or they're kind of just a slog. So I
Yeah.
don't know how many more times we're gonna get. I hope we do get some epic heavyweight fights, but unfortunately, the other side of that is their lives get altered dramatically because they hit so hard. So
Right.
I mean, but Bigfoot Silva has he had a very nasty run at the tail end of his career. I hope his career is over at this point. Honestly, I didn't get to verify, but yeah, he lost a lot of fights, a lot of bad fights. People were looking out for him, saying like, "Please stop fighting," and he just kept fighting, and yeah, it's not great. But this fight itself, if we can ignore that and just compartmentalize it from a pure entertainment standpoint, I don't know if you're gonna find much better 25-minute heavyweight experiences than this.
Totally.
It was very good. And one thing I do want to come clean about is because I know I said that I was happy with how I was proud of how I scored it. I slight asterisk at the end there because when the decision got read out, it's like 47-47. I was like, I forgot 10-8s were an option for the fifth round. I scored at 10-9 and I had Silva winning. And then I was like, oh, that's right. I could do that. I forgot about that. I was focusing
Eh,
so hard each round, like trying to hone in on who wins the round that I didn't look at by how much.
a warning to the New York State Athletic Commission: Jake Aryeh is not ready
No.
to sit courtside and score. Okay,
I am.
he got to pass the course too. I've passed the course, but either way, I think maybe a little bit more training involved.
Yes, yeah. But you know what? What made this fight beautiful in terms of like if we're talking about scoring, it's not that it was particularly difficult. It was like one guy this happened for at least two or three rounds. Like one guy was really just dominating one round and then it completely flips the next round and the other guy is just completely dominating. It was great. But
It's an incredible experience. Yeah, this is like every heavyweight fighter fan's dream because it doesn't end. They just keep hurting each other instead of it being a knockout. Like if they crave the knockout, fine, but it's almost like you got right up into that point and then edged it and it got right back.
yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. So I think that it wraps up this homework assignment. Let's talk about the next one. Scott, what do you have for us?
I'm giving you guys Randy Couture against Lyoto the Dragon Machida from 2011. This was a part of the incredibly stacked UFC 129 lineup in Toronto that drew 55,724 fans. That was the UFC's record at the time. It is still their North American record. Couture, 47 years old coming into this fight, but he'd won three in a row. He had just beaten Hall of Fame boxer James Toney in one of the UFC's most like absolute sideshow fights that they've ever put together. Machida, coming off of the first two losses of his career, his mystique had faded. He had all this drama around him, like who could beat Machida. That was gone at this point, but still very much in his prime. And his last fight was also a split decision loss to Quentin Rampage Jackson that many felt could have gone his way. So, it was a loss, but also it wasn't necessarily the most devastating loss like the one before where he got knocked out by Shogun Hua.
That'll be a fun one to watch. I'm excited to. I've never seen that one.
Yeah, alrighty. And you back home in the comments, let us know what you thought of the last homework assignment as well. Don't forget to let us know, what you thought about that one. And Scott, to wrap up our final round, our MMA history, and this episode of Against the Cage, what happened this week in MMA?
We are going back exactly 14 years from today, October 1st, 2011. Dominic Cruz makes his final successful title defense of his original UFC Bantamweight title run, beating future legend Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. This is also the UFC's first event in Washington, D.C. Don't call it the White House, so it was over at the home of the Wizards and the Capitals. But interesting, they used to do cards like this. This was on I think Versus. I want to say this was on Versus Network. They put title fights on very strange places. They're like, oh, we'll just get it out everywhere. Now they're very much, well, it won't be paywalled anymore. It's sort of paywalled, I guess, but it's in these numbered events. We don't get title fights like that anymore.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I might
That's
have to
crazy.
watch that one back. That's crazy. Like hearing that as a fan today, like flyweight goat versus like arguable bantamweight goat
Yeah.
fighting, like I gotta go back and watch that. And maybe you at
It's
home.
not, I won't promise it's the most entertaining fight, but I
Yeah.
will say
Okay.
it's a fascinating
Fun to look back on.
clash of titans in a sense, right? We didn't know what Mighty Mouse was going to be yet, though. This is the thing. This was his last fight as a bantamweight before he became the legend of flyweight.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thank you so much for that, Scott, our MMA historian, Eric as well. Guys, it's been a pleasure. For you back home, enjoy all the fights this weekend. There's quite a lot of them, and we will see you next week.